Welcome to the M3 name is Josh Forest Estate. We're here with this beautiful E34, and you'll see why that's a joke in a little bit. So if you guys know me and you follow me and you know how I operate, you know when a car is in this setting, it's either awaiting major work and it's not one of my mint cars, because like my blue E34, it's awaiting work, but that's in the garage. So usually I'll put like my kind of busted up like cars that need like decent amount of work here, like that need motors or whatever, but I don't mind them being in this setting because in this area you get, you know, a little bit of sap and this and that. Or the second option for a car that's here is it's met the end of its life and it will not be with us much longer. So that is the topic of this video. This is a new series I will call Is That E34 Too Far Gone? And this is where I basically help you guys decide if an E34 is worth fixing or if it's at the end of its stages. And this varies person to person how you think of this as a plane goes over my head. But yeah, basically when I go out and buy a car, I kind of look at a few things on it. Is it worth fixing, or should it just be used for parts to help people later on in the community? Before we get into it, I just want to say I know there will be people, I'm sure, in the comments or thinking, why would you kill that car? I could fix it, it's worth fixing. And I understand in different parts of the world, these cars are very hard to come by, and what's not clean here might be clean there. I hear it all the time in the E34 groups and stuff. I understand that, but for where I'm at, what I'm doing, there is a point where it's just not worth fixing the car. Another plane? And I just want to show you guys what I think of as a car that's not worth fixing. So let's get into this thing. Also, yes, with a lot of money, any amount of work is possible. I mean, you could fix anything on a car, but are you really going to take a 1 in 1.3 million examples of a car in a non-desirable spec? Actually, this is a fairly desirable spec car, I guess, and dump $15,000 plus into it? Probably not. And for the guys that get mad about people that part out cars, when your E34 needs a goofy part like a door trim or a climate control module and the dealership wants $200 to $800 for a remedial like nonsense part, and you come to one of the guys like me, you're welcome. So I would stop talking trash, because one day we'll help you. So to start looking at the body of this car, you might think, okay, it's not horrible, it's not crashed, like what's wrong with this car? Why would you not fix it? Yes, we have no headlights, and I'll explain that later, because I bought this car with the front end already off of it, and when I open up the hood, you'll understand why. So, but coming around, bumper's grenaded. You could buy a bumper for a couple $100. That would never stop me from wanting to buy a car, because you could easily fix that. Fenders are decent. PDR can be done. I don't know what sort of decal was sitting here. Doors, I mean, that's a gnarly gash, but again, nothing major, fixable. This door is actually nearly rust-free, which is, I didn't even notice. Oh, this is a good door. All right, I'm gonna keep this door, but anyway, for the most part, the doors, oh, this side's door is pretty clean too. Gas tank, destroyed, rear bumper. Not bad. There's a crack down the middle. That's not, you know, you could live with that or replace the bumper. Trunk, replaceable. This is super rusty, so that's kind of you know, would elude you, but nothing too bad. But these doors are pretty gone. And this is the thing where it depends on how you feel about E34s. For me, I never want to own an E34 that looks like this. I know like some of my cars, they were starting and I live with it, like if it's minor, but like these are, like this is, when it gets to this point, like it's getting to the point where it's too far gone. And I guess if you're talking bodywork, door rust is one of the more minute issues, and it is fixable and you could drop some money in it. But do you really want to start with a base of an E34 that looks like this? Not really. You can always replace the doors, so this is not something that would make me tell you the car is too far gone. If you want to buy a car with door rust, you want to fix it, by all means, go to the West Coast, get some doors. It's easy. In the Midwest, Rust Belt, snowy places. You guys understand, most of these cars look like this, and most of us will live with it. So it does not make a car too far gone. I'm just saying, be ready for some decent amount of body work. And then if it looks like this, underside probably doesn't look that great either. Oh yeah, and if you're looking at this door, aside from the door rust, this is horrible. So this means this is all Bondo, because you can see kind of the white chipping there, and you can just chip this off by hand. And it's rusty underneath. This door is like destroyed. Again, I'm sure you could probably fix this, but do you want to fix this? I wouldn't want to. So that's a pretty horrid sight right there. These cars normally wouldn't rust like this. This is clearly a repair that didn't last long. And now this is where this car gets interesting. So normally I hate to buy a car that has been worked on and messed with, because then you have a lot of broken parts, you have a lot of mess ups because people don't know how to work on these cars, you have a lot of parts that are unusable. And buying a car with a blown up engine is something I love to do, because if the body's clean and stuff, engine work is easy, at least for me. You might be a body guy and you might say the opposite, so things are different for you. But for me, you could always yank a motor, put a new one in, and then boom, you got a perfect car. So a blown up engine would never stop me, and I would never say, okay, if it's blown up, it's too far gone. It's absolutely not. You can always buy these engines. They're, I don't want to say widely available anymore, because things have changed in the past few years, but it should never stop you. If you have the space and the ability to do it, by all means, buy an engine. But so a quick story with this car is, and you notice these cams look like they've been underwater for a year. Kid bought this car, not running, low compression motor, needs an engine, and it was supposed to be like a project car for him, and you'll find out in a little bit why he's lucky I took this off his hands, because the engine is the least of this car's concerns. I mean, we got a sheared motor mounts, we got a destroyed harness. I mean, this car is very far gone, aside from just needing a motor. But and it actually came with a spare motor, so yeah, I could swap this car. But you want to do the work to swap an engine on a car that looks like this, and we'll get to the worst of it in a second. This is just an interesting purchase, because I don't know why, for like, I guess they started to pull the motor. Pulling the valve cover is the one thing you don't have to do when pulling a motor, and the Vanos as well. I don't know why that stuff came off. I have it, but like, this motor is obviously gone. And actually, I'm gonna go get a ratchet and see if we can crank this motor by hand, because I feel like we won't be able to, how this top end looks, but the bottom end's decent. It might still spin. So I'm gonna go grab a ratchet and let's crank this thing. Like, look at these cams. Like, look at the rust on them. That sucks, because these heads are, even with low compression, you can rebuild a cylinder head, and usually that problem doesn't lie in the cylinder head. You know, you could machine the bottom, hone the cylinders, new piston rings, valves, valve stem seals, and you'll likely fix it. So it sucks that this was left how it was, because otherwise it would have been a usable head. But at this point, I don't even know, like, maybe you can polish cams like you can a crankshaft, but even then, I wouldn't use these. I don't know all that much about machining and like internal engine work like that, so I won't say, but I don't know. It looks horrible. All right, we're at it. Oh, well, besides the motor mounts lifting, it cranked over pretty smoothly for the first like half a crank, and then it kind of locked up on me. So let me see if that was just because my extension is getting in my way. I can't get past a certain point, and there's only one spark plug, so I shouldn't have a hard time. This motor should spin over effortlessly, but it was going, and now it's not. I can't get it past this point. What if I spin it backwards? I mean, yeah, it spins, so the bottom end's not seized or anything. Usually when you hit that hard point, it's just the compression stroke, but with no spark plugs it shouldn't have one, so I'm not really sure. But that was just for fun. We don't even care, because this whole motor's trash anyway. The only thing I'm going to pull off of it is the oil pan. So alright, that's enough in this engine bay. Let's close my half attached hood. We're done with you. Now let's get to another interesting part. Interior. Usually it wouldn't look like this. This actually interior has been partially stripped by yours truly, because this car is done for. So I've already sold off some of the interior stuff. Usually the interior will outlast the exterior. Obviously, you know, the interior doesn't usually have elements acting on it. If you have a leak or something like that, or windows are left down and you have mold, then, you know, if you want to deal with mold, that's up to you. But mold to me is dangerous and you don't really want to mess with it. But one thing I noticed when pulling up the carpets on this car, and this car you could tell if you looked underneath it, so when you're buying a car you should probably look underneath it, but this is something that is not widely apparent on these cars when you look from underneath, because sometimes you don't get your head around where you have to, like the pinch weld, because the car is too low to the ground and you can't get under there. And not everyone, including myself, jacks up a car or has a lift to look at it when you're buying it. So sometimes I just don't look underneath the car. But this is something, sometimes it's not bad enough to where you wouldn't notice from underneath and you have to look from here. And no one would do this buying a car, nor would I. But something to note on these E34s is I will show you, up here on these front floorboards, we got some rust. And I'm going to show you what I think is the true nail in the coffin for this car. So this isn't it yet, but that is the start of a very, very grim future for this car. That's like one of the drain plugs that these cars all have, and usually the drain plug will fall out, go missing, or whatever, and then what you have here is a hole. And you know where that hole leads to? Right at the bottom of your carpet. And you know what's at the bottom of your carpet? Foam. And you know what foam does? It absorbs moisture. So you drive this car in the rain and you have moisture coming through that hole, and you have a soaking wet underside of your carpet, which then eats away at your metal floorboards. And that is what you have there. We got some rust there, we got some rust around there, we got some rust under the seat, which is usual, not from the carpet, but under the battery. Usually get some rust on these. But around that hole is bad, and it is so bad that it is pretty soft. Let me see if I can poke this with something, like maybe this eyeliner I found. Yeah, that is completely soft. I bet I could put a hole in it. Yep. So that's your floor right there. And now we have a hole. But this side is nothing in comparison to this side, and I lost my shoe. Look at this. This is sad. So this is same thing, the hole would be right here. This is a total separation from the pinch weld, and you can see it goes all the way to up there. And my guess is that up here is so weak, I can probably stomp it out. And yep, there we go. We make the gap a little bit bigger. So, sorry, I'm shimming around with all this junk here. Look at that. Yes, you can patch floors in cars. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of time, and an immense amount of money if you were to repair this. Because this whole thing has pretty much lost its integrity, which is not good. And it would have to weld up to this pinch weld. Pretty much you'd be cutting out this whole rocker pinch weld. And I mean, at that point, you're well over the value of the car. I don't know who would argue with me that they would rather fix this than just find a different chassis. I'm sure there might be a few guys out there, but for the love of God, you do not want this. I mean, this is straight up rotted. I couldn't even imagine driving this car. Like, this whole floor pan is now weak and not structural anymore. Your seat bolts there, so I guess I can't say that you can just, your seat's gonna fall through the floor, but I mean, part of the integrity of where the seat is from this, and it's gone. So that, to me, is what really put the nail in the coffin for this car. I would never, never build a car that looks like this. I would never want to drive a car that looks like this. I would never own a car that looks like this. This is horrid, and this is what is basically telling you this car's done for. The interior condition doesn't really matter. This dash is, I don't know how this happens. Looks like a Velociraptor kind of got in here, because these dashes don't crack, so I don't know what's going on here. But what a horrid sight this was. And yes, if you went from underneath, you would see this, but sometimes, like, if that, well, that's bad too, but sometimes the plugs are still in place and the rust kind of is up here under the carpet. You would never see it from underneath. I've looked at many cars that looked fine underneath, and then I pulled the carpet and they were not fine. But something like this you would obviously see. And if all that wasn't bad enough, now we get to another thing that for me pretty quickly condemns the car, and that is, if you look in there, You see all those pellets and stuff? That is a gift from our little friend called mice and rodents, and that is poop, and that is horrid and disgusting, and that means there's been mice in this car. There was a little bit under the rear deck as well. The rest of the interior was good. They usually don't get in the interior, but they'll get in like the cabin air filter, and they'll get here and stuff. And the thing about mouse poop is it usually is involved with a nest, which is very like dusty and a lot of particles, and that stuff is horrible for you. It gets in the air and the particles, and it gets in your lungs, and you can get really sick from like inhaling mouse poop and surrounding like mice nests and stuff. This isn't bad, it's just a little bit, which is weird to me. Like there's no nests in here and stuff. You see there's a bunch of junk. But when a car has that, and I've had cars that are really bad, infested with mice, like living in the cabin air filter currently. This car doesn't have any mice in it right now, but that is what I would call a biohazard, and at that point I don't want the car. Yeah, sure, you can clean it, you can use high grade you know, sterile cleaner and stuff like that, and when it's just in the trunk, that might be a different story than if it's all over the interior. But for me, don't want anything to do with it. So that's another way to condemn a car for me. It is disgusting. The smell lingers even after you clean it, and it is just a disaster. So I'm closing that because I don't want anything to do with that mouse poop. But so that's another sure way to basically condemn an E34. Another funny thing about this car, which I don't even know if this kid realized it, each wheel is missing lugs. This one has 3. The front one has 2. Passenger side rear, 2. And passenger side front, also 2. This car, you notice it has different wheels on it. It had the same front wheels on, and they were too small, getting stuck on the calipers, so the car wouldn't move, so they were seized up completely. So I had to swap them. When I was swapping them and checking my brakes, I had all the wheels off. Every single lug is stripped on this car. So that means that all 4 hubs are bad. You can maybe get lucky with tapping it. That's a little sketchy for something as much as a wheel hub, but that's another thing that kind of condemns this car, is it needs 4 basically hubs, which is your wheel bearings in the front and the rear. I'm not sure how that goes. I've never done rear wheel bearings. So yeah, this car is an absolute disaster, a mess. It needs tens of thousands of dollars to even make it remotely nice. I have obviously way too many cars as it is. I have my own projects. I would never go forth with wanting to build this or make this car anything. It is disgusting. It is wrecked. It needs nearly everything. It needs body work, it needs engine work, it needs interior work. Obviously it's already basically gone for me, but yeah, I just want to make this video to kind of teach you guys things to look for to decide if an E34 is far beyond it. And again, this will kind of vary person to person. Some of you might want a tens of thousands of dollars project. Some of you might want to just buy a clean one from the start, because at the end of the day, prices now are different, but a clean 525 used to be like a $2,000 car. So yeah, you don't really want to spend $20,000 on a $2,000 car. And what's crazy is this car was listed for like 1,700 bucks. I didn't pay that, but that's crazy, because used something like this used to be like $200, and something pretty clean used to be like 1,700 to like $4 grand, and now it's, with the market, it's all flopped around, and it's just it's insane. So I hope this video taught you guys something. I hope it helped people decide whether or not, you know, what to look for to buy an E34, whether or not they want one or not. Just try to make a video utilizing this car before it, you know. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.